this is Mary from the Xenia Community Library. Today I'm going to walk you through the steps to create a Pom Pom Wreath. It will take you longer than the time of this video to create, but I hope you will have all the information you need by the end. This is the wreath we will be making. I used one wreath ring and 3 small skeins of medium worsted weight yarn and a little bit of contrasting color yarn of similar weight, as well as you'll need a good pair of scissors. We will go through 2 different ways to create pom-poms, as well as then how to tie them on to the wreath frame, as well as adding ribbon or additional small trinkets such as small ornaments to your wreath. I hope you enjoy the process. Let's get started. Without buying a fancy tool, my favorite way to create a lot of pom-poms in a quick manner is by using a chair. This is the back of a chair here, and I'm going to take my yarn and tie it to one side of the chair, just like this. You want to go ahead and tie it in a knot so it doesn't go anywhere, and you'll have a nice strong knot there. Then with the rest of your yarn, you just want to wrap it around the chair and keep going and going. You don't want to wrap it super tight, but you don't want it to be kind of falling down either. So take your yarn and just keep going around and around and around. And I'm going to switch to one that I've already got ready, so I don't have to go through all the wrapping here with you. Okay, here's one that I've wrapped a lot, and you can see, kind of get an idea of how thick it is. If you are using the same skeins of yarn that I showed you before that are really small, these ones are 131 yards of medium worsted weight yarn. You can get yarn of this size at some dollar stores. A skein this size costs $1 at some dollar stores. So I wrapped a whole skein of that small yarn around a chair. And then when you get to the end, you'll have a loose end. You just kind of want to tuck it in around some of the other wrapped pieces that are there. Okay, then you'll have this thick wrap of yarn. The first thing you're going to do is grab your scissors and look on the inside of the chair. This, where my finger is showing right there, that's the original knot where I tied it to the chair. And I just want to snip that so that I will be able to get it off of the chair at the end. Next, you'll need your contrasting color of yarn, and you want to cut about 8-inch pieces that we're then going to use to tie on to our large wrap of yarn here. Okay, we're going to go around the wrapped yarn and tie it as tight as you possibly can. I have torn a lot of these 8-inch pieces and trying to get them super, super tight. You want to make it as tight as you can. You want to put another piece about 2 inches from the first. And again, tie that as tight as you can. After you do a couple that are 2 inches apart, it's okay to space the next ones more, about 4 inches or even 6 inches. Why I'm doing that is because when the yarn, oh, there I tore one. While the yarn is wrapped around the chair, it's a little bit harder to get it really, really tight. But if you leave spaces like this, you can add in these contrasting colored ties after you've taken the yarn off the chair. Okay, so I've got a couple ties that are 2 inches apart right here. This one is more like 4 inches, and the next one here is about 6 inches, I would say. And you do want to tie it on the other side of the chair also, so I've already done there. But once you've got that in place, then you can take your good pair of trusty scissors, and we're going to cut in the middle of one where it's only 2 inches apart. Okay, you want to take it slow. It's not going to cut right away. It'll take a little bit to cut through. Okay, just keep cutting it little by little, and eventually it'll come off the chair. Okay, so now I have a long kind of strip. Doesn't look much like pom-poms yet, but we will get there. Okay, now that I have my wrapped yarn off of the chair, I'm going to go back and add ties to in between the places where I went 4 inches or 6 inches. I'm going to add ties so that the ties are now 1.5 to 2 inches apart. Just tie them as tight as you can, and go through the whole wrapped piece of yarn you have here and add those on. Okay, after you've got your whole wrap of yarn tied when they're about 2 inches apart, you're going to take your trusty sharp scissors again and make sure you're cutting in the middle of in between the ties. Okay, so like so, and there you go. Okay, now you can take your pom-poms and kind of fluff them out so they're more pom-pommy. Then when you first cut them, they'll look like that. Just kind of fluff them out, and then it'll look more like a pom-pom. If you want to trim them up to look more rounded at this point, you can, but just make sure you do not cut the contrasting color yarn that you used to tie the knot with, because we need to use that for the next step. Okay, and that is how you make about 16 or so pom-poms in a fairly quick manner. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to create pom-poms by hand. I used this method to create the larger purple pom-poms in my example wreath. Okay, so you just hold the end of your yarn in your hand like that and start wrapping around. I kind of space my fingers out some. It helps to prevent the yarn from getting too tight around your fingers. And you want to keep going. Just wrap, wrap, wrap until it gets pretty thick. In order to have a nice, thick, full looking pom-pom, you need to kind of wrap it a lot. Let's try that. Okay, I'm just going to take my scissors and snip the end of the yarn. Okay, and then I'm going to take one of my contrasting color pieces that is about 8 inches long. I have that ready. Now, I find it easier to kind of pull the yarn on my hands off, but I'm using my hands to keep the loops on this side and loops on that side separate and make sure the middle is clear, because we need to tie our contrasting color yarn through the middle of our wrapped yarn. As you pull it tighter, you can kind of move it around, but you want to make sure it is in the middle here. So I'm going to pull that nice and tight and then tie it again to make a knot. And then we're going to take our scissors and go through and cut all these little loops on either side of the tie. Once you've cut all the loops, you can fluff it to make it nice and round. This one, this method, I did end up with a few more kind of loose strings that I had to trim off to make it kind of a little bit more rounded looking, but it still worked well. Again, you don't want to trim your contrasting color yarn so that you will know where you're going to tie it to the wreath frame. Today I'm using a 8-inch diameter 3-wire wreath frame. Before you tie any of your pom-poms to the frame, you need to plan out your pattern. In my example wreath here, I tied 2 green ones to the outer 2 rings and then the inner 2 rings. Then I tied 1 of my large purple pom-poms, and then I tied a blue one to the inside and outside, then a purple to the outside, and then a green one to the inside, outside, a large purple to the outside, and then I kept repeating the pattern all the way around. Before I tied the pom-poms on, I did tie some ribbon on to the wreath near a junction of one of the support frame pieces in order to be able to hang it up on a hook or a wreath holder. Okay, let's move on to tying our pom-poms to the wreath frame. The front of the wreath frame is where the middle ring is kind of bumped up or forward, and the back is where it's kind of going the opposite direction. So we're going to start out by grabbing a pom-pom, and on the back side here, getting the string and tying it around 2 of the rings, the outer one and the middle. And then just tie that in a knot so that it won't go anywhere. Then make sure the pom-pom stays on the other side of the wreath frame. Okay. And then if I was going by what I did in my example, I would take another one of that same color and tie it to the inner and the middle ring. And then push them together where you want them. Don't worry about the contrasting color yarn right now. At the very end, after you get everything where you want it, where you like it, then you can trim those off. But right now, just focus on tying the pom-poms where you want them, kind of pushing them together. You can kind of move them around until you get it full on there. As you're tying your pom-poms on your wreath, if you would like to add small trinkets, such as tiny ornaments or anything else you can think of, maybe extra ribbons, bows, various things. Just tie those on as you would tie the pom-poms on, and leave enough room for the ornament to lay kind of on top of where your pom-poms are. I hope you enjoy making your pom-pom wreath. It might take you a few days to make, but you'll be able to enjoy it for years. Thanks for watching.